Some spots around the world have been constructed for espionage purposes, for defense, or for holding troops in the case of an international conflict. Once tensions begin to calm down just a little bit, many installations will go abandoned and attention focused elsewhere. Remnants of our past suspicion will still exist from the Cold War, and some buildings are so well built that they're being used for more peaceful purposes now. From reinforced concrete flak towers in Germany to coastal defensive structures in California, here are abandoned military places.
Hey guys, how's it going? I'm your host, American Eye, keeping an eye on everything you want to know. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy this video.
But first, we asked you guys if you can recognize where American Eye went during his vacation recently, and we're going to feature Matt Kent, who was the first to say Williamsburg. We're also going to feature RN Swan to be the first to specify what location. Stay tuned for today's question for your chance to get featured. Number 13. St. Lazare Submarine Base. Located in southwestern France, a large fortified base was constructed by the Germans at the end of the Second World War as one of the largest harbors on the Atlantic coast of France. U-boat operations would begin from this base almost immediately after it was completed in 1940. The base was about 300 meters long, 130 meters wide, and 18 meters high in order to accommodate and protect Germany's valuable equipment. Much of it was reinforced with concrete and granite to prevent it from being victims of Allied bombing raids. Anti-aircraft guns, machine guns, and mortars were also placed here to make it a formidable fortification. Number 12. Abandoned Flak Towers, Austria and Germany. In order to defend themselves from an Allied air invasion, the Germans constructed some anti-aircraft towers in strategic cities such as Berlin, Hamburg, Vienna, Stuttgart, and Frankfurt. This photo here shows a heavy flak gun being positioned at the Berlin Zoo. The tower was demolished at the end of the conflict by the British. This photo here shows the Flak Turn 3, which is still visible today and found in Berlin. Although it's somewhat graffitied, it's one of the more notable flak towers that hasn't been completely destroyed yet. There are also some in Vienna too. There are 4 found inside 2 different parks, which are built from reinforced concrete. They become useful in modern times as cell phone towers and to project movies onto. Seems a little bit weird though, right? Number 11. The Salute Airfield. Situated just a few miles away from the town of Salute, this creepy abandoned runway is left abandoned. This was once used to store long-range aircraft, possibly long enough to run attacks on the US. The Soviet military operated this device since they took over Estonia in the mid-1940s. It was mostly used for interceptor jets if the US decided to attack Russia somehow. The facility had 28 plane hangars and has been sitting in an open field as a reminder of Estonia's occupied past. No one has really seen a reason to completely destroy the airfield. In fact, they began using it to have drag races. The creepy buildings from the past seem to double as echo chambers, and they were so well built that they reflect any noise made inside. Number 10. Attic Island, Alaska. Sometimes places become abandoned because they're so remote from the rest of the world. This island is located in the eastern part of the Aleutian Island chain and was once home to Alaska's southernmost town. It's been home to both the native Inuit people, the Russians, and also the Americans. The harsh winds and cold temperatures certainly make living here a challenge. However, due to its strategic location, about 6,000 American military men who saw previous combat were stationed here. Fresh food was hard to come by, very few women to comfort them, and the soil was quite difficult to cultivate any crops on. This was about as close as the Americans could possibly get to Russia, so it was an important place of land to fortify. Today, only 110 people have decided to stay here, and US Army buildings are now empty. The airport still remains in use, but it's certainly not an easy place to get to. Number 9. The Toplaronne Line. During the first global conflict, the French had their own defensive structure known as the Maginot Line. So what did the Swiss have? They had the Toplaronne Line. It's here where they placed strategic dragon's teeth fortifications with the purpose of preventing tank attacks from cruising into their neutral little country. The fortifications look so much like the Swiss chocolate Toblerone that it earned its nickname that way. As another part of their fortifications, the Swiss used an innocent little pink house and fortified it with machine guns. This is called the Villa Rosa, and it's an incognito stronghold with fake windows. Normally, when you need to open a garage, you'd expect to see a car. Here, when you open the garage, you get 2 big cannons, so watch out. Number 8. Titos Underground Air Force Base. This formerly secret air base was completed under the Yugoslavian government and is located between the Bosnian and Croatian border and is one of the largest underground bases in Europe that we know about. Construction on this massive project began in 1948 to 1968 and costed a reported $6 billion. This also makes it one of the most expensive military bases ever made in Europe. This base was built to be sturdy enough to withstand a 20-kiloton nuclear bomb, deploy radar detection systems, and as a secret underground air base to store all kinds of planes, tanks, bombs, etc. You better believe that this thing was used to the max in the early 1900s during the Yugoslav wars. However, it was also discovered and bombed eventually. The base was abandoned at the end of the war, but people who work for the black market might still be selling contraband here. There's also a bunch of jagged metal laying around, and if you don't have a good flashlight, it looks like you could really hurt yourself or get easily lost, so only enter at your own risk. Number 7. Cold War German Base. In eastern Germany, during the Cold War, you almost feel as though the tension is about to burst at some point. With NATO and the Americans being right next door, Russia felt as though it was necessary to militarize this zone as much as possible. The city of Wunstorf was the Soviet Army's biggest headquarters in Germany. The soldiers enjoyed a rather lavish living quarters equipped with a massive swimming pool that you see here and a Russian-style theater. It's said that a lot of Russians who were occupying other territories preferred to be among other Russians and kind of kept it this way at the base. It was recently on sale for roughly $4 million. Would you want to move in here? Number 6. Volsrozdenia Island. This island is located on what was the Aral Sea before it disappeared mysteriously. It was here where the Soviet Union constructed a top-secret biological weapons testing facility called Erlas 7. Explore this place on Google Maps and you'll find some eerie ghost towns and some abandoned places. This began the main laboratory where crews tested multiple effects of fatal diseases and how to spread them effectively. Working here, you can imagine that wearing a gas mask was necessary for survival. They worked with horrific agents, including anthrax, smallpox, the Black Plague, and more. In 1971, weaponized smallpox was accidentally released, killing 3 people and infecting 10. Due to the shrinking Aral Sea, the island is now more of a peninsula. Many claim there are still large stockpiles of anthrax buried here after the facility closed in 1990. Anthrax spores can survive underground for decades, so if you come here, bring some kind of hand sanitizer. Number 5. The National Defense Coast Yard. So what does the US do with its fleets after the Vietnam War? Well, for now, they're just letting them sit in the ocean in case they need them at some time in the future. These ghost ships in the photo are located at the Suisun Bay in California, but the National Defense Reserve Fleet also has locations in Texas and Virginia. In 1959, the Suisun Bay contained an estimated 324 ships, but that number went down to 250 after they began to realize that it probably wasn't the best idea to let old ships sit there forever. Also referred to as the Mothball Fleet, these ships are beginning to completely fall apart and pollute the waters with hazardous chemicals and heavy paints. In June of 2007, they'd estimated that roughly 21 tons of toxic paint material eroded and settled into the bay. It's hard to imagine them actually putting these things to use during a time of war. Number 4. The Teufelsberg Listening Station. In case you thought the NSA was only conducting their spying operations in the US, think again. This NSA base was built in Teufelsberg, which translates to the Devil's Hill, and the name makes sense now. The Teufelsberg Listening Station was built on a location where the Germans once had a technical university, but listening operations began working here in July of 1961 to eavesdrop on the Soviets. After the Allies realized that they had pretty good reception on top of this hill, they built more ball-like structures like this. During the 1990s, operating the building became too expensive to maintain. People have talked about removing the listening stations and building some apartments or hotels there, but others felt as though it should remain as a reminder of the past. In any case, it's heavily covered in graffiti, and eventually urban explorers would break in and climb to the top of the station. What do you guys think? Tear it down or let it stay? Number 3. The Hangy Bunker. Located along a coastline known as the Devil's Slide, this military installation is found in Northern California. Here in this photo, you're facing the north and are able to tell that this is kind of a weird building. It gets its nickname because you can probably imagine a slow and painful slide to the bottom. This was a series of observation posts before radar was discovered, and people would actually use binoculars to find out what's going on. Sounds pretty old to me. Here in this photo, we see an aerial view of the bunker as it hangs over the cliffside. You can imagine all the great views you would have had being stationed here, but it's left abandoned because of military advance in radar. Number 2. The RAF Stenengat. This WW2 radar station was found in Stenengat, Lincolnshire, England, and was used to detect Luftwaffe raids, which were certainly known to be devastating to the English homeland. In order to prevent terror raining from the skies, radar installations were the best way to detect if the Germans were coming. Eventually, after the war was won, Great Britain decided to keep the radar site and make upgrades to it in 1959. Eventually, in 1980, it was decided that they really didn't need it all that much anymore, and the site was decommissioned and partially demolished in 1996. There are still some strange-looking radar plates, which are used for educational purposes. But before we get to our number 1, can you guys recognize this location in the photo? Leave us the answer in the comments section for your chance to get featured in an upcoming video. And number 1, Nakoma. Also known as the Safeguard Program, this military base was installed in 1976 in order to protect the USA's stockpile of ranged missiles in North Dakota. This flat-top pyramid-looking bunker made from reinforced concrete was designed in order to stay intact after a small ICBM missile launch from the Chinese or the Russians. It's believed to be the only operational known anti-ballistic missile bunker in the world at that time, and even had a nuclear power plant underground. The Great Plains in the Northwest proved to be a great location to construct this. You can imagine what would happen if the Chinese or Soviets spotted this strange building. They'd probably have no idea what was going on. It apparently cost $6 billion to construct and was only in operation for about 6 months. This base is abandoned today, but it still stands strong as a reminder of how fear of enemies can result in extremely expensive projects.
Whoa, now that was a great video. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe for more videos, and stay tuned because we got great videos coming up.